like this. When my mother yells at this, it's because she loves me. I was rooting for you. We were all rooting for you. How dare you? Learn something from this. When you go to bed at night, you lay there and you take responsibility for yourself.
So, after years of clips circulating and former contestants speaking out about the trauma they experienced, Tyra Banks is finally admitting that America's Next Top Model went too far. And honestly, I was ready to give her a little bit of credit for owning up to it, until she said the reason it happened was because the viewers demanded it. Girl, what? You're really going to sit here and blame the audience for decisions you made as the creator and executive producer of this show? The internet is not having it, and neither am I, because the things that happened on that show were genuinely unhinged, and somebody needs to be held accountable. America's Next Top Model premiered in 2003 and ran for 24 seasons until 2018. And if you were alive during that time, you definitely watched it, or at least knew someone who was obsessed with it. When the show had a cult following, everyone was tuning in to watch these young girls compete for a chance to break into the modeling industry, and it was wildly successful. Every week there were photo shoot challenges and eliminations determined by a panel of fashion experts, and no matter how many times the judges changed throughout the years, the one constant was always Tyra Banks. And that's important to remember because Tyra wasn't just the host. She created this show. She was the executive producer. She approved the challenges. She signed off on the makeovers. She made the final decisions about what made it to air. So when we talk about the toxic things that happened on ANTM, we're not talking about some runaway production that got out of hand without her knowledge. We're talking about choices that Tyra either made directly or approved of because she thought it would make good television. And for years, nobody really questioned it because that's just how reality TV was back then. We watched these girls get torn down and built back up, and we called it entertainment. But now that we're looking back with fresh eyes, the things that happened on that show are genuinely hard to defend, and the makeovers were just the beginning of how bad it got. One of the things America's Next Top Model was most famous for was their extreme makeovers. The goal was to transform every girl into something completely different from how they walked in. And when I say drastic, I mean drastic. Girls would show up with long hair and leave bald. They'd come in blonde and leave with jet black pixie cuts. And the thing is, nobody was pulling them aside beforehand to explain what was about to happen. They would just sit them in the chair and start cutting.
So you know what I'm doing? Have you ever seen that movie Rosemary's Baby starring Mia Farrow? You haven't? Well, I'll explain what her hair looked like in that movie. It was a little bit lighter than yours, and it was this short.
Oh my God.
So you're gonna have to say bye-bye to Beauty Queen.
We're not just cutting this just to cut your hair.
Oh,
this
no.
fits your face.
Your face is strong enough to handle that. Cassandra, why are you crying?
I love my hair.
It'll always grow back.
And if a girl got upset about her makeover, if she cried or expressed that she wasn't happy, the show would zoom in on that and frame her as being difficult or stuck up. Like you just drastically changed this person's entire appearance without their real consent, and you're mad that she's having an emotional reaction. And sometimes, if a girl was reluctant or showed too much resistance, Tyra would make the makeover even more extreme, just to watch her break down on camera.
So, Danielle, you went to the dentist, but you refused to have your gap closed. Do you really think you can have a CoverGirl contract with the gap in your mouth?
Yes, why not? This is all people see. Easily beautiful CoverGirl.
That was the entertainment. Watching young women have emotional breakdowns over their appearance for ratings. There was a contestant named Cassandra in season 5 who was a hair model before she came on the show. Her hair was literally her moneymaker. It's how she booked jobs. It's what the agencies wanted her for. And they chopped it all off anyway. Within a week of that episode airing, every agency she was signed with dropped her. She came out of that show with no title, no prize money, and no career. She ended up homeless and in rehab within a year. That's not drama for TV. That's destroying someone's actual life.
I've been accused of being a man because I have no hair. I was told for so long that I wasn't beautiful. Constantly battling and trying to prove yourself and be feminine is exhausting.
But the makeovers weren't even the worst part of what Tyra put these girls through. See, beyond being a modeling competition, ANTM was a reality TV show, and they were masters at poking people's traumas just enough to make them break down and look crazy on camera. As soon as the girls were selected, they were interviewed relentlessly, and absolutely nothing was off limits to the producers. They wanted to know every painful thing that ever happened to you so they could use it later. In season 10, 2 contestants named Marvita and Fatima had opened up in their interviews about experiencing homelessness and how traumatic that period of their lives was. So what did production do with that information? They made the first photo shoot challenge a homeless theme. These girls who had actually lived through that were told to channel all of the emotions they felt when they were homeless while cameras rolled. The show tried to frame it as charitable, like they were shining a light on an important issue. But forcing someone to relive their worst moments for a photo shoot is not charity, it's exploitation. And then there was a moment in Cycle 4 when a model named Kahlen found out that a close friend of hers had just passed away. She was devastated, doubled over crying, barely able to function, and the very next shoot was scheduled to take place in a cemetery. The cameras were everywhere in that house. In every room, even the bathrooms. There's no way production didn't know what Kahlen was going through when they sent her to pose on top of graves the day after she learned her friend died. They knew, and they did it anyway, because grief makes for compelling television.
It's really messed up. I mean, I know nobody knows the circumstances, but I just don't want to be here.
And then there were 7. Well, I hope none of you are afraid of tight and confined, creepy spaces. Follow me.
It took everything in my body not to just give up right at that moment.
And the racial stuff that happened on that show is a whole other level of problematic. You would think that Tyra being a black woman would have made her more cautious about perpetuating harmful racial stereotypes, but honestly, it seems like she leaned into it even harder. They did these race-swapping photo shoots where girls would change their skin tones and hairstyling to appear as different ethnicities. We're talking about putting white contestants in blackface and having models do blatant cultural appropriation like it was just another creative concept. Jay Manuel, who was the creative director on the show, has talked about how uncomfortable he was with some of these shoots, but he was too afraid to speak up because he was just told to do his job.
Specifically in Cycle 4, the whole race swapping shoot, I was very uncomfortable. My parents grew up in South Africa. They're from South Africa. Under apartheid. So you've got to understand the kind of the family I grew up in. I'm biracial. It just was very uncomfortable.
So even the people working behind the scenes knew this was wrong and felt like they couldn't say anything. That tells you everything about the environment Tyra created on that set. And through all of this, through the trauma exploitation and the problematic makeovers and the racial insensitivity, these girls weren't even being compensated fairly. They each got a $40 stipend for the week. $40. And they were always hungry because that's not enough money to feed yourself properly. And when you're hungry, you get irritable and angry and you lash out. And that was the whole point. The producers wanted to see them at their worst because conflict drives ratings. So after all of this came to light, what did Tyra have to say for herself? When the old clips started circulating and people began calling out how problematic the show was, Tyra's first response was basically nothing. She posted something about seeing the posts about insensitivity from past ANTM moments and said she agreed those were some off choices, and then she sent virtual hugs. Virtual hugs. For years of documented mistreatment of young women who trusted her to help their careers. And the thing that made it worse is that more than half of these contestants came out of the show with nothing. They did the traumatizing photo shoots, they went through the extreme makeovers, they lived in that house with no privacy and no food, and at the end of it, they couldn't even use those photos to book real jobs. The shoots that broke them emotionally were worthless professionally. So what exactly did they go through all of that for? Former contestants started speaking out because they were tired of watching Tyra get praised as this icon when they knew the truth about what happened behind the scenes. They talked about the lasting psychological effects, the career damage, the way they were treated like disposable content rather than human beings with futures. And now Tyra is finally admitting more, but her explanation has everyone furious. So now Tyra is coming out and saying yes, the show went too far. She's acknowledging that it went from wanting to break barriers in the modeling world to basically being a torture boot camp for young models. She's admitting that they recorded every single moment and pushed these girls beyond what was reasonable. And I was almost ready to respect her for finally owning it until she said the reason it happened was because the viewers demanded it. Over 100 million people were tuning in, she said, and at some point they decided it was fine to do whatever it took to keep those ratings up. So basically, she's saying, it's our fault. The audience wanted drama, so she gave us drama, and if girls got traumatized in the process, well, that's just what the people wanted to see. And the internet immediately called her out for the deflection. People are saying you will not gaslight us into forgetting how you terrorized those contestants. Others are pointing out that she both created these moments and made them happen herself. So shifting blame to viewers doesn't make sense. Someone said they were 7 years old when they watched the show. So how exactly are they responsible for production decisions made by adults? The thing is, nobody was sitting at home tweeting at Tyra Banks demanding that she exploit a homeless woman's trauma or force a grieving girl to shoot in a cemetery. Nobody asked her to put contestants in blackface or cut off a hair model's livelihood. Those were creative choices made by Tyra and her production team because they thought it would be entertaining. The audience watched what was put in front of them, but Tyra is the one who decided what that would be. And this is a pattern we see with a lot of people in power. When they finally get called out, instead of saying, I made these decisions and I was wrong, they spread the blame around to everyone else. The network wanted ratings. The audience wanted drama. The industry was different back then. Everyone was doing it. Anything to avoid saying, I personally caused harm and I'm personally responsible. Tyra Banks built an empire off of America's Next Top Model. She made millions of dollars. She became a household name. She used the show as a platform to launch other ventures. And while she was collecting all of those benefits, young women were being psychologically damaged, having their careers destroyed, and walking away with nothing but trauma and a $40 weekly stipend. So no, the audience is not to blame for what happened on that show. Tyra Banks created it. Tyra Banks produced it. Tyra Banks approved every challenge and every makeover and every exploitation of someone's darkest moments. And if she wants to actually make amends, she needs to stop deflecting and start taking real accountability for the harm she caused. Virtual hugs aren't going to cut it.